Hi, I'm Marysia and I'm here with Sean, and we are spending a few days planning an advanced training for SAS graduates of our leadership training, and we wanted to speak a little bit about it. But actually, what's most exciting about this training is that the themes that are arising in the training that we want to bring are really the deeper themes that have been emerging through the last years of practice. So I want to spend a bit of time talking to Sean about the things that have inspired this creation, and through that dive into some of the most important and most challenging themes that have arisen in practice culture over the last, how many years?
We're on our 8th year.
Yeah, so 8 years of practice and diving in very deeply into this paradigm. So,
Hey. Yeah, so this talk, it's exciting to introduce this training. It's called the SAS Pro. We've done quite a few trainings that were called the SAS Plus, and I think what happened with those is the people that had done SAS, who were still enthusiastic, wanted to go deeper. We wanted to bring them together, because when we came together, just fireworks happened and we discovered new possibilities, and it was just good to be together, to have the experience in the room. But what's actually emerged now, why it's called a pro, is because after 7 years it feels like there's a distinct level now that's upgrade from SAS. It's not just a plus, it's like there's a whole new landscape that's been created in the practice as we've gone deeper. And we thought for years about an advanced training, and the first one that we were almost going to put out, I said no to, because I actually felt internally that we weren't ready as leaders, never mind the practice and the community, and I felt it's slowly become over the years that our maturity and development as leaders is now ready, but also the practice community and the practice itself is ready for some really exciting emergent potentials and a kind of a new stage in what we're doing with the practice.
So when I hear you, it sounds like you've been connected to, or like tuning into when are you ready, when are we ready, as leaders, when's the community or the practice community ready? So it sounds like that, in a way, that's landing, and I want to know more about that readiness, like what are we ready for, or what are you ready for within that?
Well, the realization when I was like, right, I'm ready for this training, came in the summer, and actually at the Circling Festival there was just, it's been brewing for a long time. John and Jordan and myself and with you, we've been talking about this, and but suddenly I just saw, like, especially around how we can cultivate life force and the way we can differentiate between like what's pre-rational, what's like regressing in, like almost like what psychotherapy does, but we do it in our unique way, but this rescuing kind of deeper parts and bringing them into the light, which we've always been good at in the practice, but now we're getting more discernment around when to actually like say yes or no to that process and what that process is doing. And so I just saw that there's a way that we've become calmer, and there's like deeper peace and like emergent maturity, I think, in the practice, that it's ready to go deeper into the field. It's like it's not percolated all the way through. It's more like the people on the leading edge of the practice, or the more experience. We see these things happening, and now we want it to really go through the whole practice into the world.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's something around like bringing more clarity, bringing more distinction into like what's emerging. So there's still a deep commitment to being in what's emerging and what's arising, and at the same time like bringing a deeper, potentially a deeper clarity or a deeper discernment. And then also, like, it also sounds like it's a lot about then choice. Like, how do we actually weave in what's arising, and how do we always go into what's arising, let's say in the group or in ourselves? Like maybe we choose differently at different times. Yeah. And
if for those that haven't done as much circling that might be listening, but the way we circle people, where we move from this like knowing what to do when we're with someone, like should we open up their emotions or own their anger or open up to more transcendent meditative states, or what is it that we take this different approach where we start to relax into the moment, into immediacy, and then from what's already here we get guided. So there's so much more of a being and being guided by experience and by life on a deeper level. We get this sense, and it tends to have such a big impact on our own being, but also others, that they're being related to from a like already being enough, or there already being a lot of potential here, that we don't have to do or fix something to make what's here better, but there's emergent potential. So that's just between two individuals. We also relate to the whole field this way, so that's why we've been like waiting and listening, and now we feel like the being of the circling practice or surrender leadership practice is now ready. It's got these emergent potentials that we can distinguish more, and we can teach them more clearly. So it feels really exciting actually, or it was really good to feel a full yes, not like going a little bit ahead or something, or doing it for the wrong motivations. It was like a yes all the way through.
Yeah, and like hearing you, I kind of brings me into contact with what I loved about circling in the beginning, and what I've always loved about it, which is like this deep commitment to direct. Yeah, it's like a commitment to direct experience and to receiving like reality and any human being as a kind of portion of that reality, like as they are right now. And yeah, it feels to me like that's what really opened my heart with the practice. And there's that, and then there's also this kind of passion, because I think what I notice in practitioners or in the practice communities, there's a lot of passion. Like there's a lot of passion about being together and about learning how to really see someone, and learning how to deeply meet what's there, and deeply meet ourselves, and deeply meet the other. And like my sense just being in these days with you and exploring this from our different perspectives is that it's like actually we really want this training to kind of serve that passion. So rather than kind of going into some distinctions or frames that take us away from the moment, or away from each other's being, or away from the intimacy of being, it's more like how can we see even more clearly, so that we can kind of more deeply touch each other, and bring an even deeper compassion, bring an even deeper clarity to each other, and for leaders of the practice, like to those that you're serving through your leadership, through the spaces you're creating in whatever that looks like for you. And it looks so many different ways for so many people. Yeah.
And how this training's going to look, there's going to be a way we're playing, and this is already happening. I mean, me and Jordan just led in San Francisco, and you can see a lot of the things we're talking about now are already appearing in our leadership. And John's currently in Bali leading.
He's in Thailand now.
And Thailand, yeah. And there's something that we're all sharing, and everyone's brought a strong piece of this, what I would call like the emergent structure. And so the emergent speaks to the kind of immediacy and the surrender, but the structure is actually something where we've come through and defined what's emerging clearly, so it can be represented and recreated often and deepened. So in this training, we're going to be like, for those that maybe have done the practice for a few years, they may even be a little bit surprised, like the way we're going to be bringing in quite strong structures. Like we're going to be releasing this kind of schedule, and it's going to be clearly like in the mornings we're going to be starting with embodiment and awareness training, so like meditation, but really geared around some of the deeper themes that we're working with around love and truth and soul and developmental trauma, which I'll get into, which is around connection intelligence. And then we're going to be doing, like, the morning is going to be about specific practices that are very geared around the deep work we've done around developmental trauma, reframed in the circling surrendered leadership paradigm, which we'll get into more. We're going to structure in walks in nature, so we're really rejuvenating, but having this practice that's meeting the world more. It's not we're all in the workshop being intimate. There's a way we're letting go and being in nature. Then we're definitely going to have lots of cultivating in the cauldron of surrendered leadership, where we let our wings go and be in that emergent space that we all love, but with lots of new seeds, like deep ways to see and resonate with parts of our being that are not easy to feel always. And then we've got the evening for creativity and
fun and intimacy and
dance,
play and totally.
So there's, as people will see, we'll release this more structured format, which John's already pioneered in. He did a 5-day with advanced practitioners where he tried this out, and there's a way with dancing with structure, which is exciting because we get to bring in what's beautiful about structure, that it gives us clarity and a sense of direction, but we're still playing with the surrender. There's no contradiction for us in the practice. It's not like the practice is different for us. It's just the practice is more mature or deeper, so we get to play with more things and use the beauty of structure, but also see where it limits also the emergent potential.
Yeah, and I get the feeling of like the kind of capacities. So it's like the structure brings a kind of cultivation of capacity, like certain capacities that we're going to hone in on, like we're going to explore this particular element. And these are all things that have come through the practice, like again and again and again. So these aren't just like we've read a book and gone like, oh yeah, we should learn this. It's like these are kind of consistent, very consistent themes and like, I feel my heart when I speak to it, because they feel like deep human dilemmas, like a lot of these things, like deep aspects of the human experience or the human condition that invariably shows itself in the space, because that's what we do. We're inviting that level of openness to the, sort of everything that being human can mean, and the parts of us that are also beyond that, as well as the parts of us that are very much that, just our bodies and our small parts and the scared parts. But there's something about like this kind of cultivation of certain qualities, and then opportunity to play and to really play and to play full out, and get the feeling of like quite a powerful sense of flexibility or dexterity that comes from playing with like structure and flow. At least I see that in my own life. Like I need to cultivate both, because I'm more on the flow side. Like I like to kind of do things when I'm inspired and kind of flow like that. But then I've noticed bringing in more structure to my life it's given me a deeper trust in myself, actually.
Well, the thing that I've actually seen with you and myself and the guys as we've gone deeper, if you actually look at how we live day to day, we're actually pretty disciplined human beings, if compared to the average, and definitely compared to what I was before the practice. So in a way I am a flow. I am generally like seeing what I really feel, and I'm not going to do stuff from a push. But actually, if you look at my day-to-day, I'm like reading and meditating and moving more than I ever did with consciousness. And still I actually long even for that structure to mature. Like I'm sure as I keep going, as I've found so far, that my own personal structure will get clearer and more defined, and at the same time it gets more the flows actually are deeper and more free. So it's just interesting how I see it as a polarity between the surrender and leadership. When we say structure, I think it's the same as like leadership. that when you go deeper into one, you go deeper into the other. And we definitely have seen in the practice one, like the earlier phase where we were very strong on the emergent side, on the surrender, and rightly so, because it was so challenging and it was so easy not to let go and to see what was there. So actually, I think there was a lot of courage in that, but there was a naivety that now we can see that we were actually, we call it the tyranny of surrender now. There's this place where you start to always change the context of your practice towards, no, we have to be with this, or we have to follow this, or this person's in pain, so like you're avoiding if you don't stay here, and if we don't stay in this navigation of like what is really here and who's like control. And actually that there can be a denial in that space of actually there's quite a lot of clarity in the room that no, actually right now, like even though this person's in pain or I'm in pain, the actual thing that serves us and our practice is actually to invite you to contain and to be with that, but to also then step into a structure where you can start to explore maybe polarity or developmental trauma or exciting things around how awareness works, and just there's so many things we can explore, and actually if we're always at the speed of the person who needs needs attention at a certain point, the group gets slow, and it gets there's a messiness that it doesn't actually feel like emergent chaos potential. It's more like confusion and stuckness, and people using power in different ways that isn't totally conscious. And so we've got much clearer on those things, and boundary setting has become an emergent thing that's really cleared the practice in certain ways. But I know I'm getting a bit ahead, so I want to make sure, like, I think we're going to clarify a lot of those things I've just touched on.
Yeah. So maybe we'll move forward into those things actually, because it feels like they're already like wanting to be seen. So we spoke a little bit about like the kinds of themes that are going to be coming through, the kinds of sharing that's going to happen. And so that there feels like there's definitely insights and wisdom from other paradigms or training, like for example training of yours, of mine, and like also within our field.
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit about like what that's like to start to include, these other paradigms into this paradigm, or your vision with that?
Yeah, this is awesome, because one of the things that excites us the most with surrendered leadership, especially, and surrendered leadership, for those who haven't heard this before, just very briefly, difference between circling and surrendered leadership is circling is more a practice based around exploring connection. So it's like between me and you, or like me and you, like if we explore like what's happening in presence and in connection, so to really explore that terrain, we get this magical world where suddenly like what was unconscious becomes a playground. Surrendered leadership it's got a similar principle, but it's to exploring multiple connections. So it's what happens in a collective, and what happens when we bring attention and explore and embody what's happening in between us all. So that brings on whole different capacities, and it's a more complex practice because you've got decisions around self-leadership, you've got, you're being impacted by multiple people, there's constellations, it's like, and there's more potential for disconnection as well, because it can be overwhelming or confusing what's actually happening, so you need more discernment. So in terms of the two practices, that's how we hold it. So there's still an underlying sense of surrender and leadership, but surrendered leadership is for the collective and connection's more for the between two people.
I really like the clarity of that, yeah. I think because it also points to just the immense challenge actually of surrendered leadership, and the kind of level of challenge and complexity that this practice points to is just very high.
So if that's the core practice, and then what we've seen, and it is that in the structure of surrendered leadership and circling, but more in surrendered leadership, it's actually we call it a cross-paradigmatic structure. And why we think it's a cross-paradigmatic structure is because it's actually made out of paradigms. So this like being with the level of sensation, which is like a meditative practice, this owning your experience, where you start taking more responsibility for what you're experiencing and communicate it in a way that's not blaming or making the outside responsible, and you're expanding your selfhood. That's very inspired by therapeutic paradigms. So it's kind of borrowed from them, and then you've got this trusting your experience, which is this elegant way of navigating which way you go and who you meet and how far deep you want to go, which is a very tantric principle.
It's like very tantric,
yeah. So we've brought these kind of important distinctions and practices from these other paradigms, but they're kind of elegantly woven into this exploration of either connection or multiple connections. So when we bring those kind of paradigm wisdoms into circling and surrendered leadership, then we get this whole new form which everyone's experienced in a circling space. So, but what's actually happened as the paradigm's evolving is we've actually naturally, I think, as individuals, but also the practice, I think, seems to create this, is we get drawn to other paradigms that can help us like inhabit deeper parts of our practice. So there was one stage where like we noticed that in terms of like the pre-rational part of our experience, the part that's under our consciousness, in our subconscious, or it was tricky to navigate, and we had a lot of intuition, and I think we were on the right path with it actually, but we went into body work and into NAM, especially the developmental trauma training. And you did a lot of body work with Pascal and
other teachers.
So we went into these paradigms, and we get a lot of wisdom from them, and we always went in there sincerely, like maybe they'll like totally change our paradigm because they're just on a deeper level, but what we've more found is that they help us see and discern and resonate with different frequencies that previously were difficult to discern in. We also worked with someone who's like a philosophical counselor, which it was a very surprising paradigm to get into, but he's turned out to be an amazing mentor that's taught us about what true boundaries are when they come from being, and how much they impact the clarity of your experience and being with others, and things around codependence, but also around like a true philosophical relationship to experience that we all have anyway. Even the people that say they're not philosophical, that's their philosophy. So anyway, we've been into Tantra, and so there's a way that we've been drawing on these other paradigms, but then there's this like, how do you elegantly like bring the experience of other paradigms into our paradigm, honor what's beautiful in the other paradigm, but then also not turn circling away from its core foundation. So
totally.
So it's like talking about it this morning, we just feel we're more and more able to like navigate this paradigmatic landscape.
And I think that like, because when you speak about it, and I feel it in myself as well, like I think actually there's a deep humility. It's like there are masters of other paradigms, and like being willing to kind of bend the knee and like go into another field and really be like, I don't know this, and I'm here to learn it. And at the same time, I've always felt, and I've had, my relationship with circling is changing all the time, deepening, and it feels like a marriage. Like sometimes it's great and sometimes we have trouble and we need to have some help, and they usually come to you for a bit of that help. But like there's something about there's somehow, for me, there's a deep commitment to the practice of circling. Like it's spoken to my heart the deepest of anything I've ever met. But then I also got very inspired, by body work and by kind of particular types of spiritual contexts. And I felt, this kind of being in somebody else's field and like really like willing to kind of really learn from them and learn that worldview and what's important there. And actually it just feels like it really enriches our field, because how can we in our practice not be interconnected with every other? Like that is in one way the essence of our practice too. It's like this deep openness also to everything that's being shown, and it's so vulnerable because it's like hard to, can't just be like, oh, this is like, these are the kind of walls of the castle, and like they're never going to change. Like they're always changing.
And in the research about what makes a cult and what makes an organisation a healthy organisation, right, and all that stuff, the thing, like I looked over that about a year ago, and I think like any successful practice or organisation, we've had people challenge us around things like that. But actually what I saw is a lot of the inherent things we've been drawn to are the kind of antidote to the what can go wrong in a culture that's based around a practice. And because I mean it's just very hard for humans to come together and not end up creating something that goes a bit offline in some way. And one of the antidotes is to immerse yourself in other paradigms,
totally.
And to have mentors that are not impacted by the internal culture. So we just really sort that out. And why that's difficult is because when we go to these other paradigms, like when I'm in circling, often people find me very skillful and they want to practice with me, and then I go to this like Mondo Zen retreat, which I loved, and I've been there, that's one place that I go to resource, and it's a totally different focus. It's really geared towards this levels of awareness, and the deepest part of ourself is a no self. And it's like, even though I can have those experiences in circling, it's really geared around that in a different kind of structure, and I'm not elegant in that structure, especially in the beginning. So it's like, it's humbling in the right way, I think, to feel novice again and to make mistakes, and to no one being like, oh yeah, I want to meditate near you, or like, can you help me? Like that does not happen at all, because I'm as much learning as anyone else. On the flip side of that, the way that circling is such an intense environment of exploring what's happening between us, and there's so much that happens between us that we get access to all these dimensions in a very fluid way. I also find that we progress in these paradigms much more smoothly than I remember previously, because in a way, my favourite metaphor is we're like a mixed mystical art, like the mixed martial arts, like, because we're not always just in one dimension. We're always, one moment we're in our pre-verbal trauma, the next moment we're in our soul, and the next minute we're like just dealing with a personal conflict, and that can move, and then you're suddenly a family constellation, and then next minute you're with someone who's like done tantra or tai chi, and they're like showing you this new kind of embodiment, and that can all happen within an hour. That when we go to these other paradigms, even though we go back to beginner level, it's also, I see like, oh yeah, we do cultivate a vulnerability and an openness that does actually mean we can learn and receive quickly in these environments.
Yeah, I think there is something about the beginners, like cultivating the willingness and the capacity to be in the beginner state, and like just be with that and feel what that's like. Just to be like, oh, I'm not very, I remember like my first bodywork trainings and just being like, I'm so bad at this, like I'm just so, I can't feel anything like through my hands, I don't even know where to put people's leg. It was like a Thai massage training, so I was kind of like not really knowing where to put people's limbs, and generally feeling really like out of whack. And then at the same time, it feels like I've just consistently done that, like put myself in context where I look a bit stupid, but there's such a deep gift that comes from that. And then I also hearing you, it feels it's just that thing of like the amount of stuff that can happen, and like in the surrendered leadership context or the circling context. And also I have such a deep appreciation for that willingness to kind of just meet life in that way, and not always need to put it into some kind of like trajectory that makes sense immediately, or you know, box things up so they kind of are like neat and tidy. Like there's a kind of I kind of like the truth of that kind of chaos.
And I think we have people in our field who love that part of the practice, that they don't have to, like, you know, this first half an hour we're going to get in touch with our anger, this second half an hour we're going to get in touch with our core wound, and then this part we're going to do breath work, and then after lunch, and then you're going to go to bed at this time, and then it's in the end it's like, whoa, I've not made a decision all day, and that invites me into a surrender, but I like to actually follow my inner guidance. And there are people that especially have been drawn to that part, and I think we were very drawn to that part. And we still love, that's still such a central part, but I think what we're doing now is we and in this training we're challenging especially experienced circlers to now also look at their relationship to structure. And there was this thing that the danger of a structure or a paradigm is it actually restricts you. So say we bring in an exploration of soul at one part of it might be in that moment that actually there's an emergent potential in someone that isn't related to the kind of dimension of soul, it's related to something else. So in one way we might restrict something that's actually emerging, and if you keep doing that, you keep structuring what should happen, in a way there's something that happens that I think we're both not a fan of. So it's right that people are like, no, I like the emergent structure, I want to be in that, but we're at yes. And the thing about a paradigm that I think is really, really important for people to really get, and I think they do, but just to make it totally clear, like what a paradigm does is it structures a way to experience a part of being. And you can it's like certain parts of being you can only really fully immerse in it, usually through some kind of structure. So, and actually circling is a structure. We're saying, like, if you be present and willing to be authentic in a connection, what will emerge from that is meaningful and will bring more feeling and seeing to your experience. That's actually an idea. But then when we try it out, we start to see, like, oh yeah, it does, it does open up experience. But then if you go to a meditation retreat, often they'll say, right, sit in silence, don't speak to anyone, close your eyes or look at one point and allow experience to flow through, or don't, anytime you find yourself caught in the experience, see if you can let go. And you do that for 7 days. If you do that for 7 days, what I constantly experience is at the end of that 7 days, I have an experience of reality that I can't normally access. So the paradigm is like bringing out a potential. So, but the thing with paradigms that we all know is they kind of shape your personality as well. So someone who does a lot of meditation in that way, there's some kind of way you can feel, a strength and a limitation to that. So what we're doing in this training is we want to bring in the paradigms that we feel really improve the quality of circling. We're also transforming what we're taking from them to bring it in a surrendered leadership way. And the thing you said yesterday is that there's a certain thing we're going to be asking you, which is you've got to bow at the door of the temple if you want to find the gold or to gain the true transmission. So when we're bringing in things, say, around soul or connection, intelligence or trauma or embodiment, touch, interconnectivity, all these things we're going to be looking at, there's a way that when we do the structured practice that we're actually asking you to surrender to try out these things, even if there's a sense of like, I don't know if this is my trust, or I don't know if I want to do this right now. There's it's the different way you have to navigate that experience.
Yeah, and also and there's also a full invitation for like whatever that is revealing, like about your being, but then it's just the choice of how you orient around that. Like, so there's lots of space to explore it, like later in the day, like when the surrender leadership space is. But then there's also a way that it can be brought, like the energy under that can be brought in, and that's fully welcome in a way. Like, it's not like that has to be kind of like parked or something. It's like,
exactly.
Yeah, there's a way that, like, I'm not sure if it's fully clear what I'm saying, but there's a sort of like underneath any kind of response or experience, there's like energy that's information, and that we can kind of use to keep guiding us. So we're not going to be out of the principles in that way.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the invitation. And you spoke a little bit about some of the things that are going to be part of it, and then I'm wondering if there's like one or two that you're particularly like excited about, that you want to speak a little bit more to, because I want to speak to a couple as well, but I'm very interested in.
Yeah, hopefully this will make it a lot clearer, because this is almost like the preamble.
And we're at like 36 minutes.
So obviously the grounding part of it that is surrender leadership. So those of you coming, there obviously will be a calling to be able to navigate the practice on a deeper level and bring it to the world in a more embodied and clearer way. And then one thing that's particularly, that feels like really like beautiful emergent energy that is around, well, there's 4 levels that we're going to be exploring, and that's the one that we're very familiar with, which is like authenticity, which is like the first level of practice. Can you be really authentic with what's happening? And the way I'm holding this is like that's a dimension of the practice where we get to explore like where we're truly vulnerable, what we truly feel and think, and the things that are normally not said, we bring them and navigate them. But then there's a limitation with that realm, that if you're constantly just sharing all these subtle ways you're not showing up, and these vulnerabilities and all these like honest like judgments that you're having about people, there's certain things you can't explore if you're just in that exploration. So the next one, and obviously there's a fluidity between these, but just to bring clarity that I'm defining them as different. There is fluidity, but the next one I would call awareness, and this is something as well that we already are very cultivated in the practice. So, being aware of what I'm aware of, and I'm aware, like being here with you, that I feel a flow of energy. There's a slight sense of doubt that did I speak too much in the last section, and that's just rising in my belly right now. So this exquisite sense of like witnessing and then revealing what's being witnessed, and that's beautiful as well. But then what we find in the limitation in that realm is that you called it yesterday, well, like a dryness can start to happen, or there's like a detachment.
Yeah, or like a narration of experience or something.
Yeah.
That can come through.
Yeah.
And even though when you just did that, I was like, oh wow, yeah, I so see how important that capacity is for like you being here fully with me, and then I feel more fully here with you. But then I do find, that can be a bit dry.
Yeah,
for me.
exactly.
Yeah.
And that, and if anyone can like subtly feel that thing in Marysia, where she says, dry for me, I think because you're so drawn to the embodiment, and a lot of that comes through the next realm that I call like it can have a few names, like life force or soul is the one that most resonates in me, but also essence works. And this is where we come back from like not just witnessing the experience and like being the observer that's allowing everything as it is. Suddenly we're back into the real, alive, like the energetic sense of being here, but also giving voice and body and motion to it. So the thing we found practicing this yesterday again is just like there's a way that it speaks not only to like the energy and aliveness, which feels so great as it comes into the body, and it's full of light and love and fiery primal energy, but there's also somehow it links me to, I'm this being that's in this life, and I've had this journey, and there's something about this journey that's about, like, there's an ongoing way I'm being guided to be more who I am. It seems this soul dimension's amazing for discovering that and deepening into that and becoming more uniquely yourself in that. So that realm, I've suddenly felt like I've got more ability to discern and to create practice around exploring, and I think it changes the practice significantly when that starts to be
I could feel it when we were practicing the other day. Like, it's also it just feels like what we call forth in each other, and the kind of dimension of, like, also of capacity that we call, like, the dimension of empowerment and capacity. It's like just having this deep knowing that, like, you can handle everything that life gives you, from that place, and feeling the same about myself. And there's a deep, deep relaxation in that somehow for me.
And the other thing about that also, if you're especially in the authenticity and the awareness realm, often what can happen, especially because we're in connection a lot, is we get a lot of contact with our kind of pain and our dynamics, and that to be able to navigate that skillfully is a wonderful gift. And like anything, we can get attached to it, and then the practice becomes about grinding through these places that we're in pain or in dynamics with each other. And what I find as we open into soul and life force is you feel that part of your consciousness actually is just like a part, and actually you can choose actually more than you realize to actually like let go, and the life force seems to be able to just like come through and bring healing, but it's not healing in the sense of releasing and catharsism, it's just filling up from the inside. And so it gives us a way to practice that changes it from that kind of searching and opening up and regressing into the child and into the animal and trying to find a way to weirdly bring it out, and suddenly it's like a more transpersonal but also very human way just to be alive.
I'm just thinking, like, my first birthday circle. I know you haven't done the fourth level yet, but as you're speaking, I'm just remembering my first ever birthday circle, which was really the thing that sold me on the practice, which you led actually, and it had like all of those pieces felt in it actually, and I really felt this kind of soul aspect there, and that was amazing. I hadn't had that in contact with others before. I just got a memory of that as you were talking about, because there was also a lot of animal and a lot of vulnerability and a lot of bigness and smallness and kind of everything in between.
And I think this is a good example of the kind of paradigmatic thing, that when I first found these distinctions around authenticity and awareness, so I was like, wow, this is a new level of practice, and got a bit excited about that in the model. But what I've actually been realizing as that's like relaxed in and become clearer and more grounded is that, oh no, this has been happening from the beginning. We just didn't necessarily have a language around it, but we also didn't have as much choice because we couldn't choose to navigate the different realms so easily. It was a bit more like when it came, it was cool, but so the last level is again an exciting one, and this is the one I'm definitely the least, it seems I have the least amount of choice to go into, but it's also one that's actually the most ever present. So you could call it source, and I want to reference my good friend Olin Gullufsen, because this is very much being inspired by his work, good person to check out. But this source, or it's like the non-dual kind of ground of our experience. It's like, where does the soul emerge from? Like, where does all of our experience emerge from? What is the deepest reality of our experience? Even our experience. Is it our experience on the deepest level, or is it just experience unfolding and relating with itself, and all that kind of deeper sense? And we will, in this week, really be in the meditations and in the embodiment, like giving direction, or invoking this quality of sourcing or resourcing ourselves on this really quiet, silent, ever-present, ever sourcing part of our experience. And how to navigate that in a space. And it does emerge naturally, consciously, but it's usually kind of random amalgamation of a group's exploration, where I'm thinking, as we practice more and get more elegant between these levels, that we'll actually more consciously be able to bring them in and play with them.
It feels like when you speak to it now, I can feel more of that. It's like, yeah, I almost got this image of like dipping a pen, like an old school pen, into a jar of ink, and then it just made me imagine it's like once that sort of layer has been touched, like I think it is possible to start to call it forward, and it's like a remembering that on the deepest layer, like that's where, it's this source. I mean, it's like remembering on the deeper layer, like coming back to that place, and doing that collectively is just extremely powerful.
So that's something
that's one of them.
That's one. So,
that's day one.
And that will be that'll be working internally, but it's also a model for the collective, like those 4 levels we can explore as a group.
Totally.
Let's see if I can, like, in 3 or 4 minutes, do the
connection intelligence. That feels important, that one.
So this is going to be a huge part that we've all done this training and been working together. We didn't just do trainings, we really brought it into our practice together as leaders, and we've been working it into the practice of surrendered leadership. And
I also want to say, like, there's been a lot of exploration of how to, like where does that paradigm bump up against the circling paradigm? Like, I just know so many moments of like, kind of like, oh God, like the discomfort of trying to make sense of these almost, these things that don't necessarily make sense on the first hit.
Exactly.
There's been a lot of uncomfortable.
And fears of betraying the paradigm,
totally.
Like bringing in another one, and really important furnace of development.
And challenging each other on where we might be attaching to another paradigm, or not in direct experience, or
So a lot of the authenticity level, right? Well, so a lot of this came from our therapeutic training, and the important difference between therapeutic training and surrendered leadership is they hold the context of, I would be working with you, so I would be the therapist, you would be the client, and the intention is that I really bring some kind of healing or opening to you. So we don't do that in surrendered leadership. We don't hold the context of I'm doing you, and we may do, like, I'm circling you in a birthday circle, or I'm coaching you in a circling, but still within that structure I'm not holding a sense that I know what I'm going to be, like, or the model I'm going to be holding you in. There's a much more sense of emergent exploring, and it might be that in some moment it has to be more about exploring my experience than yours, or there's a fluidity there, and that's really important, and that won't change in our explorations, but basically the core of the therapeutic training is a lot about developmental trauma, very inspired by Larry Heller from the NAM, very well adapted by Pascal. What's his?
Pascal
Beaumar, who does
into hands-on bodywork,
the
holistic bodywork. Yeah.
So very inspired by these guys and their wonderful teams. But the way that the challenge we've had with developmental trauma is that even that term can be challenged from a circling perspective, because it can give a sense. It doesn't have to, but we often find it does give a sense of a pathology or something that is not good or is like the thing that we have to heal or something. And in circling it makes, and we're so phenomenologically based, so that word just means we're so interior. If something doesn't resonate with our interior experience, we don't really like the concept. So when I actually tell you, like, feel your trauma inside of you, it's like, what actually am I feeling? Like, what is that? Because it's more of a perspective than a felt sense, and it's got a lot of baggage to it. And some of that baggage is amazing knowledge, and some of that's victim triangle inducing dynamics. And so what we actually feel it is when we connect with it in circling is the best frame we got at the moment is connection intelligence. So rather than me and Marysia exploring and then I suddenly feel ashamed and like I'm withdrawing, you could say, oh, that's his trauma response. But from a circling point of view, it's like, oh, what's actually happening? So I suddenly started to feel shame, and then I'm like pulling back. Oh, that's my connection intelligence. It's saying something's happening which is either scary or maybe inducing anger in me, or like something just happened in the connection and in my longing or need for connection that's just happened. And when we often, as soon as we start to bring awareness to that, we're like, man, that part of you is so intelligent. It picked up that subtle thing, and it moved you back, and then you had this whole thing happen. And as we connect more to it and honor it, it suddenly tells you like how much love you feel, or how much you care about others, or how much you want to stand for your boundaries, or it's just, so that's why we actually call it connection intelligence. So that said, during the week we're going to be teaching this deeper connection intelligence and the things we've integrated from developmental trauma, therapeutic knowledge and body work. So things around how we navigate our deep needs for connection, for attunement, for trust, for autonomy, for love and sexuality. And we're going to be doing specific practices that help you integrate this like knowledge around how we defend or strategize around these needs, like how like the split between my sexuality and my love happened because of the way my relationship to my mother or whatever, through my life I developed these ideas or feelings around those parts of me. We're going to give practices around how to integrate that, but also how to be with others while you're circling in that territory.
Yeah, and it feels like, because the important thing about this knowledge or these perspectives is that it simply helps, or can help us to see ourselves more clearly, and also to see others more clearly or more skillfully. And these are kind of like I said before, like these are such fundamental aspects of like the human experience. These are basic needs that we're kind of navigating around. And what I really like about your framing of the connection intelligence is that, again, it speaks to a choice that we're making of how we hold reality. Because if I have nothing against the word trauma. I think it's a very useful thing, and the fact that it's becoming more collectively recognised as a foundational issue in individuals and our culture and etc. It's a very important shift that's happening now. And at the same time, I've just felt in myself where like this framing around like, oh, I have so much trauma actually contracts me quite a lot. And I've been really in worlds where that is really been heavily my exploration, is like all the ways that I'm wounded and all the ways that I didn't get what I needed, and how that affects me and how I might never get what I need. And there's a kind of mindset that I've experienced through that just personally, and I've also seen it in others. And I do feel more recently like there's a kind of decision that can be made to see life in a certain way, like to see the connection, the connection intelligence that I've developed through these experiences, and the way that my being is like deeply intelligent on multiple levels, and some of them are unconscious. And actually, I actually feel more love for myself in that framing than I do in the trauma framing, oddly. And maybe that's not the same for everyone. But I start feeling my heart opening just talking about it. It's like that. I was once in a circle in an SAS. I think it was the first SAS I assisted. And I was looking around the room, and like I could just see. It felt to me, at least from my perspective, like everyone was navigating their deeper needs in the room, like trying to get them met. And sometimes like in a sort of gradient of skill. But then it just absolutely, it felt like it opened me so much, and I just sat there weeping for like 2 hours at the beauty of just the light of these beings that were like, if I didn't get what I need, like I'm gonna find a way. Like I'm gonna find a way somehow, you know, and just seeing that in everyone in the room, it just like, it floored me completely. And your framing around it, like it brings me closer to that place of almost like a wonder of like, wow, like that's, and not in a patronising way, because it could sound patronising, but it does bring me more into that sense of awe around the human spirit and the world and
the soul of each, the dignity of the soul.
The dignity, beautiful, exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So we'll be going deep into those, and the need for autonomy we were exploring today, like how fundamental that is for everyone, and the ways that we could go into pleasing or being a good, and then feeling resentful underneath. Just we're going to be seeing like in ourselves how we navigate that, which I think everyone's going to see a deeper level of how they, deal with their autonomy or their trust or their need for attunement and their need for the deepest level of connection to their existence. I think everyone's going to see like new levels of that, but also how you're navigating that when you're circling people or in the group, like, because you'll probably be seeing this and have intuitions around it, but once your seeing gets clearer and you're able to resonate more clearly with these different needs, I think that's where people's leadership's going to really develop. And what we found as leaders with this, like with all our development, but I think this particular like development, this collective intelligence, developmental trauma frames and practice, is our spaces have become less drama filled or more grounded, and we can more effortlessly explore depth. There isn't a sense of having to push or create a lot of tension or any. We just find actually there's a grounding that can come, and we hope, like for you that come into the training, that you can leave with a sense of going into your leadership and having more sense of these deep and vulnerable terrains, but having a more effortless or relaxed way of being able to navigate it, which is also having clearer sense of what circling is and what it's not. And
and I think that I just want to presence again that like this training is for kind of advanced practitioners, in the sense that people have done an SAS, and at the same time, like it just feels like all of these themes are relevant to anyone who's into circling. Like if you spend enough time in the practice, like it feels like these things will emerge. So just want to like loop you back in, because if you're watching this and you're not able to come to this training, hopefully there's something as well that you might recognise in your own explorations just in the practice, or even if you've met circling and you've taken it into your life, you might, even in your one-to-one connections, have started to see some of the things we've spoken about already coming through. I mean, that's definitely my experience when I started, is just like suddenly, and I guess it's that paradigm thing, but suddenly like it was like my eyes opened, and then I just saw like, oh, there's so much happening in connection, and it's actually always already been there, and I just haven't like looked at it in the same way. Yeah. And I want to also just bring in a little bit about how the body fits into all of this, because there's this work around the connection intelligence and the kind of the way that life will life, like the way that life will move and like find a way, and this kind of deep dignity of the being. There's some way in which I really want to explore, first of all, like as a group, as a field, like a deeper love that we can come into when we learn and create space for connection that's not just with words. So that's through movement and also through touch, and kind of learning how to meet each other on a deeper level, and trust our sense of how we can use the deep intelligence of our bodies when we meet another body. Because you don't actually need a huge amount of training to be able to meet people in that way, but it can take practice to kind of build that confidence. So we really want a space to build a deeper confidence of how to meet in a more embodied way. And then I also there's a couple of things that are super interesting for me, like the work I'm doing now with the body. I feel like there's a way that my sessions are about inviting more soul into the body somehow. So how can people like resource and source in the deeper parts of like who they are on a deeper level, and like bring that more into every cell, and also with the support of another. And actually it feels like when we can lend our awareness, a bit like in a circle, if you kind of lend someone your awareness, they can often go deeper, because it's like they've got double or more the amount of kind of awareness power than they have on their own, especially where things get difficult to stay in. So I want to really explore that with the group, like how can we use touch and use embodiment to just invite more soul qualities and invite more soul emergence and embodiment, as like one of the deepest ways we can resource as leaders. Resource on the level of nourishment, but also just on the level of like remembering what's important to us and what we want to bring into the world, because that's one of the deeper challenges of surrendered leadership. It's like, what do I really want? Like, what do I actually want to do now? I have this freedom to explore. It's like, had it in the circle last weekend I led, I was like, I don't actually know what I want to do. I don't actually know. Like, it's so vulnerable. Like, I've got all this space, and like, how can I kind of tap into myself on the deepest level and move with that forward? And then I also want to, part of my training has also been a little bit around the kind of how we can touch to support those places that are maybe a little contracted in the body or are holding because of having to internally provide something that wasn't provided externally. So certain parts of the body and the energy can be like held, and just a lot of magic can happen if we can just bring a little bit more presence to those places and just put a bit more love there, and or even activate them a little bit through movement. And so those are the kind of things that I'm really interested in, as well as I can feel I'm talking a lot now because I'm so excited.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's just I feel how excited I am about it, and this is interesting because this is like a place I often get vulnerable. Like, sharing what I really care about is it like takes me to an edge somehow, because I can feel like but the on the more spiritual end of my practice, there's a lot of what I've done has been around like almost undoing, like softening my body, and like being with others to soften into how life is moving our bodies, basically. So I'm quite inspired by this, like, this kind of deep listening of like, what is the true impulse? Like, it's almost like a holy impulse. It's like, if I really follow my body, what does it actually want to do? If I really give it space. And I find that kind of movement is so deeply nourishing, and such a powerful, it's not explosive, there's no dynamite, but it's like there's a powerful kind of vibration and almost like a glow of aliveness that can come through tapping into that deep listening of our own bodies. So I'm really excited to go there with a group, because I think this is what circling and surrender leadership point to anyway. And then just the opportunity to really invite the animals in, and see what's there. It really excites me. Yeah.
I'm very glad you let yourself speak, and and it's
so
good
excited.
for me, because part of what emerged in me setting this training up was actually to come to Marysia in a deeper way than I have before, to like invite you in and be like, I want you to bring what I see in your leadership into this training, which is a part of this advanced training. It's not easy to bring the deeper embodiment stuff into the surrendered leadership, and that's why we're going to be creating space in the structure to explore it. But what I've been finding as I develop in that my spaces get more about, touch starts to emerge more, and embodiment, but I've actually noticed when you're there with me it happens even more. So it's like, obviously you've cultivated that, and we really want that to come in, because in terms of, there's something we really want for this week, is we've really got a strong intention that the week's it's going to be intense, it's going to be deep, we're exploring the themes we're talking about, so it's, but we're also looking at resourcing ourselves, and not intentionally, and intentionally not going into like deep exhaustion from the week together, like setting up practices, but also time in the woods, and a schedule where we can really breathe and pace ourselves and be more grounded in the exploration, looking for anywhere where we're driving harder than we're ready for, and so there's a nourishment that we're also tuned into these days, and I know, like when I'm leading, if I've gone too much into the pole of discernment and seeing what's there and going deep, there's some way that I get very tired, and then suddenly like I can just lie now in someone's lap, or I've been held recently in a way I've never had before, but it came much more naturally. I wasn't looking for it, but really, really held. Like, it was like, whoa, I've never had that before. Wow. And how nourishing that is. So it's going to be a big part, and why I've given you a big invitation to bring your essence in and further contribute to the field like you are with that. And this, not surprisingly, is a longer video than we expected, but I do want us to try to get in as well, like in terms of specific surrendered leadership skills. We'll also be looking at, like, we're going to be in the surrendered leadership circles, and these seeds of these other paradigms, recontextualize, encircling, you're going to have access to these, but we're also going to be looking at, like, at the end of a surrendered leadership circle, ways to give each other feedback, so we can actually be generating more awareness of how we're showing up in the surrendered leadership circles, so our own individual leadership improves, but the group's collective wisdom is enhanced. We're also going to be, I'm going to be doing, like, in the beginning, and with Marysia, we're going to be mapping out, like having, a period of like half an hour after a surrender leadership circle to really map out what's happening in service of having more distinction and integration of what we're exploring. But as we go during the week, we're going to be handing that over to the group more, so you can practice that Dharma skill, or the sense-making skill of, like, being able to discern what's arising, and we're going to be exploring like the skills you need to give good feedback, or to give good like mapping, and how much actually people don't realize how much we do that from emergence. Doesn't come chiefly from book learning, it comes through discerning exactly what our phenomenological experience is. And that might sound more fancy actually than it is, but
so you're speaking a bit about, like, is that like, when there's a certification, the kind of the way that feedback is given in the circle, or
well,
do you mean
that's another dimension. So this is when we're doing surrendered leadership, at the end of the period where we're going to explore in the free emergent space, we're going to have time afterwards to really map and discern, give each other feedback, but we're going to be really defining, like, the quality skills there, so we get better and better at doing that, so when people are leading in the world, they get better at discerning and giving feedback. and it's going to improve our circling together and our surrendered leadership together. But we also, within this week, will have afternoons set for people who want to do recertifications maybe, or they want to have feedback on their birthday circling, or they want to
see how we give feedback also for that, you know.
And or you want to give feedback to someone and get feedback on your feedback. And also to lead a surrendered leadership circle maybe, and set the context and see what happens from your context, and then we can like allow the group to give you feedback on that. And so we will have afternoons for real like the main thing, which is to develop your capacity as a surrendered leadership leader.
Totally.
So in the whole package, you're hopefully going to get a real like descending into the connection intelligence and all the stuff that's there, going to go up into the soul and into the deeper awareness and source.
And I also want to mention, like, any time I've been with, like, especially in these advanced trainings, there's also something really powerful in the field. So yeah, we're there with clear purpose, like we're here to train together. It's like we're in mystery school, right? So we're training together deeply. But then also, like, we have time in the evenings, we're going to have fun, like, we're going to have our meals together, we're going to have, like, time to connect. And so I want to also speak to, like, just the power of, like, what's generated between us when everybody's really, like, more and more coming online. And it's the same for us, like, we're going to learn so much as well by doing this, like, just the field of kind of a deeper love that emerges through that. I remember the winter gathering last year, and just by the end it was, like, astonishing. The group energy was just touched me so deeply. And I think that's also a lot of the work we're doing, is this kind of bringing ourselves fully into a field, seeing how we show up in a group on a deeper level when we truly bring ourselves, being in that kind of experiment, being in that arising together. And a big part of that is, like, fun and joy and like love and, you know, light and dark and, you know, all these other things. So we'll definitely have some parties, is basically what I'm saying.
And one of those evenings I'm going to be preparing a presentation on archetypes and movies. And I know everyone knows how much I love that, but I'll get specific clips that we can watch together, and then give some dharma, and maybe others can give their own as well, and so we get a bit of archetypal collective magic in as well, and explore, like, how to develop that capacity to get archetypal knowledge from culture. So and we're running out of batteries.
We're running out of battery. It's going to turn itself off any minute. The only other thing I wanted to say was also the trajectory is a little longer, because we're going to meet beforehand for a call, and we're going to meet afterwards for a call. So there's a kind of sense of initiating a preparatory phase, like before the training actually starts, and wanting that to start it, and then having some space a little bit after the training to also integrate and meet again, I think a few weeks after the training, right? Yeah,
so online group call.
Yeah.
And I'll just plant a little seed. We're also we're probably going to give an opportunity for this group, for people in this group, to become part of an ongoing training where the group will meet online, and we'll go even deeper into these different themes, so you can really ground them and be able to lead them, and that'll be like a meetings throughout the year, but we'll let you know more on that. That's it, not yet finalised. So you wouldn't need to commit to anything around that, or right now you can just join the week if that's the main thing it's there for. So thank you very much.
If you stayed with us for this long, then that's like, wow. I'm also wanting this beautiful tree behind us. Many beautiful trees behind us.
So big love, and looking forward to seeing those of you that choose to join us. And this will very likely be a yearly at least training, so if you can't make it this year, there will be future opportunities. So big love, everyone. I hope that also inspires your practice.
That's a love. Thank you.